Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Local Grassroots Stories podcast. My name is John Cross. I'm the founder of Soccer Shorts. With me on the screen here is the co-host, as always, Mr. Dylan Wilson. Dylan, how are you doing?
Doing well, John. Good to be back. How about yourself?
Good. It was a busy week for me. How about for you? I didn't do anything since our last podcast. Anything
No, not
related to
particularly. I've been,
local
I've been,
soccer?
no, I've been down and out with. I don't know what it was. I don't. Maybe a cold. It wasn't COVID. I tested, but just I've been down and out with like a lot of chest congestion and stuff. So I'm back on the up. But I did manage to watch the SDFC game at Fair Play, which was a nice time. There was a good crowd.
Yeah.
But other than that, no, I haven't had the energy to do too much.
Well, that's a good transition for our overview of our show. We will give a couple of shout outs a little bit later in the show, specifically regarding that game on Sunday, the first game for SDFC. We're also we got some actual listener feedback for the question we asked last week about what stories we should profile on Soccer Shorts in 2025. So we'll review some of those a little bit later in the show. Plus, we'll do our new question of the week, which is going to revolve around the Open Cup. Since the Open Cup starts up here really in just a couple more weeks, so we want to get some people's thoughts about a particular question that we could use that on a future episode. But our big topic tonight is something we are going to try to do with all our Soccer Shorts broadcasts moving forward. If you ever watch reality shows, they do a reunion episode. So we thought it would be a good idea to, since we haven't done any new shows yet in 2025, that we'll take some of our old shows, we'll bring back some of the people that we profiled and ask them a little bit about their experience being profiled on Soccer Shorts and get a little update to see where they are now, because some of those original shows were, we're going on almost 6 years ago when some of those aired. So very happy that tonight we have one of the founding members of Bridge Barkada. Let me get this up here. One of the founding members from Bridge Barkada, and on here, and this was our very first episode we ever did at Soccer Shorts, actually the very first 2 episodes, and I think all told there were 5 total that we brought in, or that we did on Bridge Barkada. So we have tonight one of the founders, Mr. Paul Nacu. Paul, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so how have you been? We just mentioned the SDFC match, which we're going to talk about a little bit later for some other things. Did you go at all?
I did go.
You did go.
One of the
experience?
Yeah, I was in one of the 11 buses that went up from Snapdragon, and it's just incredible to have that many people show up at the same time. And to me, that was just like the culmination of, like you said, you started Soccer Shorts maybe 6-7 years ago with Bridge Barkada, and the reason we all got together was that initiative to bring MLS. And so it's kind of like a full circle moment. It's like, we were trying to get an MLS team in San Diego, and then for that to happen was like, it was surreal, like to finally have a team in the MLS that we wanted. I mean, sure we had iterations of like 1904 and the Loyal that kind of like gave us that experience of having our own local team. But since both of those entities have ceased to exist, it's nice to have the MLS finally in San Diego.
Yeah, well, that's interesting you mention all of those, because all those groups tie in a little bit to the Bridge Barkada story as well. So before we get into asking you some particular questions about Bridge Barkada and the experience of having the journey documented, at least in the early stages, I'm going to play a little video clip, and then when it's over, I want to ask you about it. And it's a clip where you are talking about the importance of kind of having this documented. So let me play the clip, and then I'm going to come back and ask you some questions. Here we go.
I mean, that's awesome. We have this whole process somehow documented, because this happens, I'm sure, everywhere in the world. this is just kind of emphasizing that there are groups out there just like us that just get together anywhere and play. And it just shows that there's a community out there that's thirsty for playing the sport of soccer, futsal, football, whatever you want to call it. And I think this video really will bring the community together, because I think this is something I can join. This is something I can get into, or this is something I can do on my own. And I can bring it to my own like city or my own area. I don't necessarily have to go to Chicano Park or join these pop-ups. I could just get a group of friends and then start something on my own too. So I think that kind of exposure and our story hopefully will inspire like other people to do something similar that we're doing, and that it doesn't cost money, it's free. So I think hopefully it will inspire other people to do the same.
Okay, as we come out of the video here, Paul, again, thank you. I just want to thank you for all the time you gave me in trying to tell that story. But there were quite a few things you mentioned about, being documented and story. And I want to hit some of those things that you hit on in the video in a second. But my very first question is, what was it like having someone follow you guys around for a while at so many events, taking all this video and putting things together? I know, at least in the beginning, maybe it's a little different now with the success of Bridge Barkada, but you weren't always one to jump in front of the camera. So what was it like having someone do this, kind of follow this to help you tell the story and how Bridge Barkada started?
I mean, I think it's a blessing looking back at it, because like I said, not too many things like that are really documented. It's very spontaneous, very grassroots. Like it just happened, and luckily you were there to capture it. And I felt like sometimes I didn't want to be in the camera because like I don't know what I could offer to add to it. But to me it was more important just to be a part of it and like see how I can contribute to all the others that founded this as well. So yeah, I don't know, it was cool to have, and sometimes I pay attention to it, sometimes I didn't. Like you weren't even there. So I think that was kind of the intent. Like you're just really to fly on the wall and to try to capture like the essence of it instead of like trying to script something out or anything like that. So appreciate that a lot. Yep.
Yeah. Dylan, did you have anything?
No, not off the top of my head. If you have something, go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, I know it's probably new for everyone, and frankly new for me trying to get something like this off the ground. And some of the things you mentioned in there, the pop-ups, we saw a couple of clips of like playing at Balboa Park and playing by the Midway, playing at various different places, the pop-ups that you guys would do. And then there were, and we don't have time to show all the clips and everything. We're going to provide some links in the show notes and some other stuff and other places. But there were pop-ups you did. You had various groups come. You mentioned San Diego Loyal. Landon Donovan came out and played with you guys. You had the Sockers, members of the Sockers come out and play. You had 1904. You had freestylers come. You worked with different tournaments and so forth. So of all those things that kind of happened over these last 6 years, what are some of the big things that have stood out to you in your Bridge Barkada experience?
I mean, the biggest thing is for people to come out, for us to have like a consistent group of people that showed up and to keep the pop-ups going. Because believe me, I've tried to do this several other times and no one shows up. And to me, what we had was just like a groundswell. It was just like people are passing word of mouth and people are really into it. And I feel like that is the biggest thing, because then that kind of built the community and the foundation of what is here in San Diego with all these other pop-up groups. And I think that for sure is one of the biggest things. The second is like our relationship with Chicano Park. That was something that's not necessarily easy to do, but to be accepted and welcomed in that community and to be a part of that community as well in Barrio Logan, and to show that we're providing a great community for that park. That was huge for us because that park is so special. It's the heartbeat of San Diego. So much has happened there. It represents so much to so many different people in so many different ways, and just to have that as one of like our home courts is just super special. In terms of like guests and people, like of course it's having Landon come out just before everything started. I was a U.S. men's national team fan, and like to have him come to San Diego randomly playing for the Sockers at some point during that time actually, and like to me that was huge. Like just someone of that caliber just come down to Chicano Park and spend time with us and to actually play and with the community, just that was to me like amazing. Other things are like you said, we worked with some for tournaments. We did the Tango League at Chicano Park with Adidas. We had, I think, over 16 teams. It was like a huge thing to bring the community down there. Um, one of the biggest things I don't want to forget is just we were able to bring a soccer court to that park. It's the over under initiatives where the goals pop out of the ground. One of our goals was we want to have something where we don't have to bring the goals and that people can just go to a park and play. They don't have to wait for us to organize. And for that to happen, start with the loyal and then cross the finish line with the wave, picking it up. To me, that was huge. That was basically since we started. That was like over a 4-year process. I mean, Shannon's like, oh, I spent like 2 years or so trying to get it through. I was like, we've been trying to get this. We can be patient. If it doesn't happen next month or whatever happens 6 months later, it doesn't matter. It's in the works. It's gonna happen. And for that to finally happen, just like the pinnacle of what we wanted to do as Bridge Barkada was just to have a space where people can play and get together, and just to leave that like as one of the last things we did really as like our founding group was just, I don't know, me like the biggest thing we could do for the community was just to have that process and get it done. And now there's like 3 or 4 in San Diego, and there's like 6 soccer specific courts around San Diego. There were like none when we started. And so it's just like it's amazing to see the growth in the community, and just to show that there is that want, that need, that viability, that people will come if you build it and they will play. They're out there. It's not just like, oh, they won't come, or it's just a hard surface. It's like it's odd to people. They're used to playing in a field. Like it's just different. And I feel like it just makes it more accessible, more applicable to like pick up and small-sided play. You don't need refs. You don't need 22 players. You just need 6, sometimes 4 players to play, and just made it way more accessible. So to me, that is one of the hugest things. And like, yeah, there's a lot of things, but the last one was the World Cup that we did recently in November, for us to be invited to participate in a tournament, hold the World Cup qualifier in San Diego. We had a team represent us, went to the Nationals in LA. We won the Nationals, and then we went to Latvia for a Street World Cup, East West Street World Cup. And our team finished 3rd. We surprised the world that San Diego and Tijuana have like the talent here to really represent our country, which is just mind-blowing that we came from under the bridge, just people getting together, to like somehow getting involved with different people, different organizations, and then going on a world stage. It's amazing how this has grown.
Yeah, that's incredible, because I think I want to touch on a couple of things you said. And you talked about if you build it, people will come, and I think that's very true. If anybody goes back to watch that very first episode, that was a lot of it is just kind of building it, and then with some of the interviews and people coming out, it's just like, I don't know, I saw it on Facebook or Instagram or some kind of social media and decided to come out and check it out, and people are craving this kind of thing. And the fact that you guys gave an environment first under the bridge for it and then at Chicano Park, and I think one of the best things, and you see it throughout the documentary, is the all ages aspect. I mean, you have grown men in their 40s and even 50s, if you want to like get up that. I mean, you have your normal subset of, maybe your late teens, early 20s to maybe 30, early 30s males, which is probably like your core set. But you had kids, you had 6-year-old kids, 7-year-old kids, 8-year-old kids, males, females. I mean, it was, and people in their 60s playing. You had a huge range of people, and I love the fact, again, if you watch the documentary, you'll see it, that you just show up and you get a bib, and that's what team you're on. Like, you don't come with your team. You come and you get on a team and you play quick games, and everybody gets to meet everybody, and everybody gets to have a good time and have fun. And I think that community building aspect was huge for the success of Bridge Barkada.
I totally agree.
Yeah, and then you're right, Chicano Park, iconic place for a whole variety of reasons, but certainly, what a great place to play. And I went back just even for myself to go rewatch the different episodes so I could, like, what did I miss? Trying to remember some of those things. And it was very key at the end of that first episode was, what we want is to bring a futsal court, a goal, something to specifically Chicano Park. That was the hope. But somewhere, because like you said, there weren't any anywhere. And now, how many did you say you think we have around the county?
At least 6 of those like US courts, and there's at least 3 or 4 of the pop-up over under initiative goals in the county. All over San Diego.
And that's, I mean, amazing, the change that has happened in 6-ish, 7-ish years since, I guess maybe we're getting closer to 7 when you talk about sweeping under the bridge the very first time.
Yep.
But that's amazing. And there's a lot that has to do with it, I think, with the teams that have come through, and there was some money and to try to connect with the community. But Bridge Barkada was there first, and I think that gave a platform for all of that to happen. And I'm going to share a couple of comments, because you and I both know I was looking to get all 5 of the original people on, but the other 4 kind of backed off and said, no, Paul's Bridge Barkada. And there were a lot of kind words that the other members texted me and shared with me on the side. That basically, if it wasn't for what you did, Paul, the shirts, like the active doing of things, maybe not all the ideas, but doing the shirts and putting information out there, that really helped grow. Having the music out there at the match, having a DJ, like having a DJ at the matches and things. So, those were. There were some very kind words that were shared that you are really Bridge Barkada, but I don't think anybody disagrees with that. You've done a tremendous service to the soccer culture here in San Diego. But I wonder if you could just touch on some of the other people who helped start this and their contributions to this founding of Bridge Barkada.
Yeah, I think first I'd have to mention Carl. He's the guy that found the original spot. He's the one that came up with the idea, hey, let's play somewhere. I know this spot. Let's clean it up and play. At first I was like, what's this guy talking about? I never heard of the spot. It's like it was an old DIY skate park that they tore down, and it just ended up being like a slab of open concrete, but was like covered in like maybe an inch of dirt and debris and whatever you could think of under a bridge. Yeah, just for him to have that kind of like idea, like, hey, we're doing all this work to try to bring a team, and a team, having MLS team brings people together, but this process is already doing it. It's already bringing that community together, and I feel like him like realizing like, hey, I don't know these people. I want to get to know them more. I don't want to just be like campaigning, because campaigns suck, to be honest. It's a lot of work.
They
It's a lot
do.
of stress, and just like never know what's gonna happen. And I felt like that was the one thing for me that I took away the most from that whole campaign, even though we lost, was just like, there's this community and we're still here. And that initial thought of like, let's do something, let's play the game that we love and kind of fall in love with it again, was very like key to this. And then for others to bring their passion to, like, DK was a part of it, which he's still a part of the community today. And then Drew was just like, he just always brought the ideas and the energy, very like, he understood really like what this community was. It wasn't just like we're just playing it. It was more than that. It was just, there's more vision to it. And I can bring that to Daryl. Daryl's like super visionary. Like, he was already like looking to build courts. He was already like attempting to make that progress in the city. And for him to like, he was the one that told us about the steering committee and like his process, because he tried to go talk to them and try to build a court or whatever there. But just having like these people that just had different things that they can contribute was just very instrumental for this thing to happen, because there was so many different ideas, so many different thinking of like, what could this be? What could, like, what is this? Like, for it to be very genuine, to be very, keep it on a level, like, we're not trying to make money, we're not trying to, like, what is our goal? It's like really to really play and bring people together. And then we also had Brandon come in, help with some of their videos and stuff like that. And yeah, it was just really special to have these different perspectives. And a lot of times people contributed their expertise. I mean, we had Cesar Hernandez come, he's a journalist. We've had Photo Renzi's photographer that really brought the spotlight. His photos just like were amazing. They made us look like professionals. It just made us feel like if we go there, maybe we'll get an awesome picture to share with our friends and stuff like that. And my brother was like you said, brought music. He was a DJ. He brought his turntables and stuff and speakers just to kind of like liven it up and just kind of make it more of a fun experience rather than just just people playing. So I think when there's no music, there's no, like, that atmosphere is not there, sometimes it just gets too serious, and I feel like we always need to like lighten it up. Like, I think music helped with that. And yeah, but especially like those founders really just made it happen. Just the rotation of us hosting sometimes when we couldn't make it. I mean, my son was born during this time. He's like 6.5. He's the same age as Bridge Barkada. So like, people like made this happen. We couldn't have done it without all of us, because yeah, it couldn't be done with one person for sure.
Right. Dylan, please jump in at any point if you have a question.
Yeah, well, I guess I kind of did one thing I did want to know, seeing as I also struggled to get people out to pick up games sometimes. What was the best way? I mean, I know you said word of mouth, but how did you initially go about getting people to come? Because I know that can be like a real struggle.
I mean, initially we were like on a Facebook group.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so it was kind of attract a lot of different people. So it wasn't just like the demographic on Instagram or Twitter. eventually we added Instagram to it, but it was just that I think for the most part is just the people that went had a good time and they were eager to spread the word because it wasn't like it felt special for some reason. Maybe because it was a secret spot where you had to know someone to know how to get there, and you needed like a special map of like how to access the location or whatever. I just feel like that with that people were ready, like trying to get together during that time. I think that's why it was like super special for us to start building the community that way, because everyone had their own connections during that time. Like people were part of American Outlaws, people were part of their EPL groups, and they brought people from all those groups. And it wasn't just like one set of friends. It was just like it was organizations, it was friends, it was people that support other teams or people that were in Vavi and stuff like that. It was just like it was kind of like a whole mix of things. But for sure, other pickups, definitely sharing on social media, that was kind of like a new thing at the time, because it wasn't just like a meetup group, because meetup groups sometimes like you have to charge or just like intimidating because you have to sign up or whatever. This was just like you just show up, and sometimes you didn't have to RSVP or anything, and you could just go. I think people kind of liked that. They didn't have to sign in. They didn't have to like pay anything. They're just like, if I show up, awesome, I'll have a good time. If I don't show up, it's still probably going to happen. I think that's the key thing, is the consistency at that time. We did it every week. I think multiple times. At one point, we were doing like 4 times a week, but we at least did it once a week for years.
Yeah.
So that's what really kept it afloat. It's just that consistency and just like openness for people to play and trying to be inclusive as possible. I think the kids helped a lot too, because they kind of managed the competition. Like it wasn't too competitive. We had all skills come, so it was just kind of like, it wasn't a place to be like, I'm going to show like I'm the best. It was just more of like, I just want to play and have fun type of thing.
Yeah, you mentioned it, I know that if I don't show up, it's going to still happen. Like that kind of momentum, I think, is a hard thing to capture. And so, it's impressive. It's nice to know that like it'll still be there, right? It doesn't feel laborious then. So that's kudos to you guys for catching that lightning in a bottle there. That's
I think that's the most important part, is not to burn out and just to make sure you're always having fun. Like if you're gonna organize something or host something, then you better play and you better have fun, because like there are times when we went and we didn't play and we're just like hosting. It's like, what are we doing? It's like we're getting away from why we're doing this. So it's very important for people just to like, if you're putting the time and effort to like bring goals, bring balls and all that stuff, then you should for sure play and try to enjoy it yourself as well.
I'd like to add that, Dylan, to your question about how do you get people going, as someone who was there at the very beginning, because the very first time I saw one of DK's posts, so DK posted something, and I was like, oh, I'll go down and check this out. Like what, because it's quirky, it's interesting, and I was there, and I was there one of the times where there were like 6 total people who show, in the beginning, cleaning and bringing a blower, and frankly, being at the time, I was kind of dating myself here, I was already in my 50s at that time, and it was just a little hard on my knees to try to do that. But I also thought, and I started bringing a camera, I was like, someone should document this in case something happens, it blows up, and it's cool because more people were finding out about it. And there is a piece in, I think it's episode 2 for Bridge Barkada, but it's also in the we have a 30-minute version where I re-edited a lot of the other smaller soccer shorts episodes together into one bigger piece. But there's a segment where Drew talks about it's like being a kid again. And it's like you go out with your friends and you make your own kind of playground or play space that no one really knows about. And I think this alludes to what Paul was saying. Like You had to know how to get there. You had to, and they talk about in the video, like you had to hop a fence and you had to, squeeze through a fence, and you had to get to all these places, and it made it quirky and interesting and fun. And I think the fact that the first 30 minutes usually of showing up was, right, Paul, it was spent cleaning, right? Like the first
Yeah.
30 minutes every time was spent cleaning up the area a little bit. And I think that helped give ownership to
Yeah,
people,
definitely.
right? They came in, they helped create and make the space, and they wanted to preserve it and play. And then they wanted to invite people. So I think there are a lot of things that went in. As someone who was there and then helped, kind of because of my knees, transitioned out of playing and really just did the filming. That was a big piece of it back in when it started in 2018. So yeah, that was that was part of the quirky fun part of doing it. But I have a follow-up question kind of with this, because
Yeah.
I don't want to say Bridge Barkada has run its course, but you guys posted something which, man, you're gonna have to correct me. I think it was back in June maybe, where you guys had your final kind of appearance of all the original people together. So, Paul, did that kind of mark the end of Bridge Barkada, the transition of Bridge Barkada? Is Bridge Barkada still kind of a thing? Where are we now with Bridge Barkada?
Yeah, so that was kind of like like I said, the culmination of Bridge Barkada, because that was our ribbon cutting for that court in Chicano Park, and that's what we worked for. And all the original members had families and either moved away or whatever. So I just felt like, instead of just fading away because we just can't do it anymore, let's all get together when we can, when Drew's in town, when Brandon's in town, let's do one final pick up and celebrate Bridge Barkada before because we could just easily just not do anything and disappear. But I felt like it was a good way to just put a capstone on that era of Bridge Barkada. And even myself, I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do anymore. I don't know if I was gonna continue it or I was gonna stop or whatever. And I needed to understand my balance of life and priorities with my family and everything. And so I was like, let's do this and see what happens. And during that time, that's when we got invited to the World Cup to host that tournament. And I was like, oh man, I can't pass this opportunity up. So I mean, I tried my best to be like, okay, that will be the event, this tournament, this regional tournament for this World Cup qualifier. That will be my that's my big event, because I couldn't pass it up. I was like, this is too huge. We saw it way a year before. It's but then for them to contact us and to be a part of it was just that blew my mind. So I was like, okay. And then we had several other groups already popping up, like Escondido and Chula Vista and Chicano Futsal. They're all already starting up, and I just felt like this was the time to get everyone together, and we did this tournament together, and that really brought together basically our collective of street pickup and soccer in the community. And so it was just yeah, so I guess I'm starting to get off topic, but I was just stuff kept coming up. I was supposed to be this is done, I'm gonna do whatever. And then that kind of snowballed, went to the regional, and then we're we made the national, I should go to the national tournament as well, which is in LA, and they pulled me in to help organize it as well, because we did such a good tournament in Chicano Park. So they asked me to help organize the national one, and I was like, okay, but that's in November. Okay, so I'll do that in or that was in I think September or something, and then or August, and then our team won. And then I was like, the tournament is in Latvia in November, and I was like, I can't I was like, I'm not gonna go. But then like we had our sponsor, one of our main sponsors, SCFC, stepped in, and not only did they fund the team to go, they funded two of us from the community to go. They funded Henry from Chula Vista Pickup and myself to join the team. So again, brought back into the community and just kept going. And then when I got back, I was like super motivated. Like, this is happening around the world. Like this, I finally got to meet people I've watched on Instagram and their communities blow up and like what they're doing in Europe or South America or Asia. It's just like, I can't believe I'm here. And I can't believe like I'm seeing these people in person. And it's just motivating to be like, this movement is growing. And it's hard for me to just be like, we work so hard. I can't just let it go. And so after that, like this year, I was like, what can I do? Should I just stop and just join the other groups when I want to, or can I still be a part of this community? Can I still contribute? And I feel like I still have some energy. I'm only doing like 12 pickups the entire year. That's why you see maybe I've only done 2 for January and February. We did Balboa Park. We did Oceanside Pier. And the next one at the end of the month, we're going to do a collab with Bola. They're from LA. It's going to coincide with LAFC's away trip to San Diego. So we're going to have a pickup between LA's pickup scene and San Diego. So that's in the works. But yeah, that's what I plan to do, is just 12 pickups the entire year. It'll be random places, just like originally we did. So it's not just going to be in one place, and try interesting places around San Diego, because we have the consistent pickups from the other groups in San Diego. And I felt like at least I could try to do this. So that's where Bridge Barkada is now. I'm just maybe one pickup a month or something like that, but it's not totally gone. But as it was like consistently playing every week, that's pretty much done. Like, because I can't do that alone. I don't have that energy, but I'm still finding ways to be involved as much as I can and help the other groups that are popping up in San Diego.
So speaking of other groups, can you list for some of the people who are watching or listening, if they might have heard about Bridge Barkada or this idea of street soccer or futsal and wanting to play, and then kind of hearing maybe you say that you're pulling back a little bit, there's not as many events. I think one of the legacies of Bridge Barkada is the fact that there are lots of new groups that are popping up around the counties. So can you give us some, you kind of hinted at some of the other locations of futsal courts. But
Yeah.
what are some of the other groups out there? If someone wanted to go play, right? I want to go play somewhere. Where can people go play?
Yeah, the first one, of course, is Chicano Futsal. So they're the ones that kind of continuation at Chicano Park, and they play Monday, Tuesday, Friday at 6 p.m. at Chicano Park. And then on Thursday, they play 6 to 8:30 at Park de la Cruz Rec Center, which is in City Heights, I think. And then on Sunday, they play at 9:45 a.m. At Santa Clara Point in Mission Beach. So if you look at their Instagram, Chicano Futsal, they have all that information there, and they post when they play on their stories all the time too. Sometimes they do special things too, but they're super consistent. I think they post sometimes like at the end of the year, like how many pickups they do is just like, it's ridiculous. It was like over 300 something pickups or something.
That's nearly one a day for a year.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then if you're in Escondido, they play at 8:15 on Saturdays at Washington Park in North County area. And then let me see. Chula Vista Pickup. They're starting to do multiple sites as well, but they play on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. and Saturdays at 9:30 a.m. at Lauterbach Park. And they also play at the new Paul Areola Park. I forgot where it was, but that one's more. Oh, they have it there. Sundays at 10 a.m., Mondays at 5 p.m., Wednesdays at 5 p.m. at the Harborside Park. So again, this is tons of pickup. So that's Chula Vista Pickup. And then there's one in Oceanside called Opposite Polars, and they play around 6:30 p.m. on Sundays at the Oceanside Pier or the Junior Seau Amphitheater at 6:30 on Sundays. And they just opened up a park, like a U.S. Foundation soccer specific court out there too. So they're starting to play at that park as well. That's, I don't know exactly where that is, but it's in Oceanside as well. And I think that's it in terms of free pickup. And there's Urban Soccer SD, which I usually collaborate with him. So he usually hosts pickups with me whenever Bridge Barkada does their pickup every month or so. So.
And when is this one coming up? You said the collaboration with LAFC or for the LAFC match when they come down here.
I think, when is LAFC game? LAFC game is March 29th. So I believe we were planning to do it either Saturday that morning or Friday night. So we're still in the works for that one.
Of course, I'm asking because this could be another Soccer Shorts episode. So I'm looking for things around the county. So Dylan, I want to give you one last chance if you have any questions, because I have a final question for Paul as we wrap his interview up here. So do you have anything you want to ask?
Yeah, I'm just curious to hear a little bit more about Latvia. One of my good friends, her sister-in-law is from Riga, and so I've always, I hear stories about it, and I've always kind of had an interest in Latvia specifically. So if you just have any fun anecdotes or anything from that trip that you want to share, that would be cool.
I mean, we were there for I think 3 or 4 days in Riga, so we didn't really go out too much because 2 of those days were tournament, and then 2 of those days was arriving and leaving.
Oh,
so it was very very quick. But I mean, our stay, we were in Old Town Latvia, so it was very if you think our old town's old, their old town's very old.
Sure, yes.
Like castles type thing, and the stone streets and stuff like that, and they have old bars, and their nightlife is, there's a lot of people. We went during Halloween.
Nice.
We didn't bring a costume or anything, but there were some people dressed up, and yeah, it's a lively scene, very very kind of again, step back in time, because we were literally in the old town for the majority of the time, so we didn't really see the modern city. But yeah, it was very, just, I don't know, it was very kind of romantic type of thing. Those old buildings, and just thinking of castles and stuff like that. I felt, and the churches and the cathedrals and all that, all in this one vicinity, just together. And yeah, and then you still have some remnants of the Soviet Union type of thing. So I was just wow, this is, some stuff has happened here.
Yeah, super cool.
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely recommend, if you're in that area, to stop by. I think has a lot to offer. I think, that was surprising to me. That's kind of where some of the 3v3 street soccer like originated. That's why they had it there. They had a very huge futsal like historic like background, and they played in tournaments. Even one of their teams, I think, won the European like 3v3 tournament or something. So they had some history too. So we're like, why are we going to Latvia? There's some history there. So
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Paul, thank you. I have one final question, but I don't want to forget. I want to thank you very much for coming on the show with us, for, on my end, giving me all the time and access that I could have ever hoped to. You were, well, I could tell you were reluctant sometimes. You were always there for an interview. And I'm glad we were able to capture a lot of the things we did, especially in those early days, to have them, to preserve some of that history here in San Diego of where, I won't say street soccer started, but I think kind of the explosion, this modern explosion of street soccer, and now having these teams in courts. So thank you very much for all you've done and given to the soccer community. So my final question is, I would like your help in kind of giving back a little bit here to the soccer community, or how we could help. And I texted you that I'd be asking this question, but as we are looking for people, groups, events, things to profile for soccer shorts in 2025 and beyond, you got the benefit of being the very first one. What suggestions do you have? Who should we make sure we don't miss, or deserves to be profiled on soccer shorts, if there's an interesting story there that people need to know about?
I think Chicano futsal is very interesting, but I think right now it's Chula Vista pickup soccer. They've been going to city council meetings. They've been kicked out by park rangers. They've been really like trying to push accessibility in Chula Vista. And I feel like that story needs that spotlight, because just like it just shows that the community wants it, and then for them to try to like push the city, like the city saying, no, you have to have permits, you have to pay for the lights, you can't be here, you're considered organized because there's more than two of you and you arrange the time, and all that stuff is just like, it puts into question why those rules are there, especially if like you want to play at that park. How can you play soccer if there's more than two people? You have to tell people to come at a certain time. You can't invite
friends then.
Yeah.
Whoever show up.
Yeah, it's like, so to me that's interesting, because like something's gonna give there. Like you have people that want to play, that's what the intent of these parks are, is to bring people together. And I understand, if people are making money or it's businesses, and like sometimes those entities have priority, which is kind of makes parks seem like they are more for businesses rather than the community. So I feel like this is kind of questioning like those rules and laws that we have in place. And I feel like if we want to grow this sport like organically, we have to, of course, we have to work with everybody. We can't just be like, no, be against the law. We have to be like, let's look at this law and see like what is this in, what is its true intent? Like let's try to figure out if this makes sense to apply it to people trying to play soccer. Like if there's a grass field and you get kicked out because you're playing soccer and no one else is using it at that time, it's like, why? People are paying their taxes and all that stuff. And I feel like that story right now is very interesting to me, because like we didn't have to fight go to city council meetings or whatever for Bridge Barkada, but they are taking that step and initiative to do so. I mean, they've talked to the mayor, they've had the mayor pay for some or waive the fees at certain times. But that's, to me, that's an interesting story, because that will kind of lend itself to the other cities in San Diego County, because those similar rules exist. Some may not be enforced in other cities as much, but they exist. And I feel like that is an interesting story to see where that goes and how that comes to light. I think also, if I had to, another one is Escondido. Escondido is starting to pop up and their ambitions of like what they want to see in that community. And I feel like they're kind of like when we started, they have big ideas of what they want to do, not just be constrained in Washington Park, but what else they could do in the community, and maybe become more of a nonprofit entity or something like that. So I think ultimately this whole street soccer scene is coming together, and we formed a street soccer collective, these groups, along with New Vision Urban Impact. They're a nonprofit group already, that we're like trying to work together to try to bring in our collective interests and try to push for San Diego to be like the place for street soccer. So it's a big story, I think, out there.
All right. That's awesome. Thank you very much for the story ideas. I really wish what you talked about with Chula Vista Pickup was an anomaly, but when someone,
Yeah.
which I'm sure you do, follows street soccer around the U.S. as well, of different pockets of groups, and this is a common theme and thread around the U.S. especially, is no one's using it, and someone's coming around telling people they can't use it. And we'll have to see. Hopefully this collective will help as well. But thank you very much for the ideas. We'll see if we can start doing some development on some of those stories. And Paul, again, thank you very much for taking time out of your evening to come share the Bridge Barkada story with us and where things are. And I'm sure you and I both will be seeing each other around the soccer community a lot more, especially now that I'm getting back into the swing with the soccer short stuff. So I'll be camera in hand at lots of events. So I'm sure we'll be seeing each other a lot more.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. And again, like what you are doing is just like, it really is able to capture what's happening in our city, and I think that's so so valuable to our community, just to have that documented somewhere. Because like I said, if you didn't have a camera on us, maybe people wouldn't know what we're doing, what we're about. So I'm happy you get to explore more stories in San Diego. So thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I'm very much looking forward to getting back in the swing of things. All right. Thanks, Paul. Have a good evening.
Yep.
All right, Dylan. What are your thoughts? You told me kind of pre-show that you never went to Bridge Barkada, like never. I think you said you'd never gone to one of the things. What are your thoughts now about spending some time with Paul and finding out a little bit more about our local street soccer scene and Bridge Barkada in particular?
Yeah, that is true. As we talked about last episode, I moved to San Diego in the summer of 2019. So my getting to know people and getting integrated into the community was obviously cut off pretty short in the beginning of 2020. So I didn't really start to get to know a lot of the folks involved with Bridge Barkada well until like 2022, when I started to get a lot more involved with the locals and loyal. So no, I didn't ever really have the opportunity to go to a game. But that said, it was cool to learn a little bit more about just kind of the backstory, because, I know I've heard a lot about it from other folks, but sometimes it's nice to hear about kind of the nuts and bolts. Like I said, I have a pickup game I like to play in that struggles to get people to show up. So it was nice to kind of hear about a success story, just using, like, capturing that momentum. It's one of those things where it's just kind of, you wonder if it would even be like replicable. It's just kind of, sometimes you capture lightning in a bottle, and it's interesting.
Yeah, and hopefully, I love some of the ideas that Paul gave. I really want to try to tackle some of those, and in fact, we did get some feedback on from other people of what kind of stories we should do. So we'll go over some of those ideas in just a second. But first, I want to do a couple of shout outs. I don't know if you have anyone to shout out, and We mentioned last week we're not covering SDFC or the Wave or any teams or players. We're trying to get into the deeper soccer culture here in San Diego. But I would like to comment about the first game for SDFC, their victory over the LA Galaxy last weekend, and really more to give a couple of shout outs. So let me get a couple of things set up here. I don't have the right screen on in front of me. Hold on. Okay, so the first one is just a huge shout out to the supporters. I believe there were something like, I heard a couple of times on the broadcast, 1,200 supporters. I think Paul said 11 buses that went up there. And this is really a small segment of them. Like, this doesn't even come close. They were loud. You could hear them the entire broadcast. It almost felt like a home game for San Diego. So I know a lot of people who are involved over there in the Supporters Union, and just a huge shout out to what they brought to that game and what they are likely to bring, hopefully, for this first home match. So, and I think it's kind of hard to tell. You can see some stairs on the right-hand side of the picture, and I think right kind of at the end of that, maybe a couple rows up from the bottom. I'm not sure if that's Paul or not there. Kind of looks like Paul a little bit, but
It does.
I was
I
looking
think that
through and just
vest,
recognizing some of the faces.
Yeah, I recognize that vest. I think that is Paul on the right side there.
Yeah, so a huge shout out to the supporters for what they brought. Excited to see what they're going to bring for this first match and represent San Diego.
I want to say too that the team getting the win was nice. It was fun being at Fair Play when those goals were scored. But I was mostly excited for those supporters, and like you mentioned, we know a lot of those folks, a lot of familiar faces in that picture. And I think that you and I, you especially, but you and I both know how much hard work and like struggle has gone into getting to this point, to a point where 1,200 people were busing up to LA for the inaugural match of STFC's history. And so just huge kudos to everybody involved in making everything with the Supporters Union happen, because I just know what a labor of love it's been, and I'm so happy that it has worked out for them the way it has. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun this Saturday. I'm currently scrambling to get myself a ticket, but anyway, that's not the point. Just huge kudos to everybody involved, because I know how hard they've worked for this.
Yeah, and on those lines, you said you're scrambling to get a ticket. I actually, for anyone who might be there, who sees it, I will be at the tailgate. I'm going to be doing some filming for a series of upcoming episodes. Actually, I'm trying to catch a whole bunch of different people to get some comments and input about things. Plus, probably do some things about this opening match and the tailgate and stuff from a supporter experience. I will not be at the game, but I will be there probably early in the setup of the tailgate and through the march into, at least not into the stadium, but up to the gate. And that will probably be my time there. But if you see me there, I might be asking you for an interview, whoever's there.
Sounds good, yeah.
Some of the things that are already in the work for Soccer Shorts that are coming up that I'd like to get some people's comments and feedback on. So that's one thing. The other thing about the game, though, that I want to bring up, and this, because we do a lot with San Diego Punto Football. This, I just did a screen grab, and it was from the post-match presser with, you can see there are a lot of our local stations, you can see ESPN, but dead center, right in the bottom, is the microphone with the San Diego Punto Football mic flag on it. I want to give a huge shout out to Tony for seriously totally bossing that post-match presser. They posted the video. It's like 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes of all the things that came through. And as soon as someone was introduced, man, Tony was on it. He had the first questions. He had good, solid questions. I mean, this is how you do it. And frankly, if you're interested in soccer and current events in soccer and what's going on, you should be following San Diego Punto Football. They do a phenomenal job. And I think a lot of people on the outside will dismiss, their local podcast, these two guys, they don't know much, but really they do a lot for our community. They've been producing shows for 5 years straight, haven't missed a week. and nailed that post-match presser. So really, if you're not listening to the Two Balls and a Mic podcast, you should be. They're on, and that's under the San Diego Punto Football umbrella. They go Mondays at 8 o'clock. So go to, I think I have a banner here. Let me pull that up. Go to San Diego Punto Football for, if I can find it. There we go. Go to San Diego Punto Football and make sure you check out their socials, check out what they have going, their podcasts. They do a soccer's podcast on Tuesday nights. There's a movie club podcast with Drew, who was mentioned, one of the founders of Bridge Barkada, with Cesar Hernandez, who was also mentioned in our interview earlier, who's a writer for ESPN, and they watch soccer movies and evaluate them and rate them. So that's another podcast you can find over there at the San Diego Punto Football website. So check those out if you're interested. But again, huge shout out to San Diego Punto Football for what they do for our soccer community. Okay, are we ready to look at some of the results from last week?
Yeah, let's do it. I have not seen these yet, so.
Yeah, you have not. These are going to be new.
As new to me as anybody watching.
This is my also getting back in the swing of things. I'm trying to do a little more graphics and video clips that we can bring in. I apologize ahead of time for the people watching on video, at least, that I was not able to, but these were some of the results too. So we're just going to go through them, orally. The question last week was, who should we profile on Soccer Shorts in 2025? Just the same thing we asked Paul at the end of his interview. And here are some of the answers we got back. There were a couple general things about soccer pubs, because we have a rich history of pubs that have catered to different soccer groups. Bluefoot was mentioned a bit, and some people had mentioned the Harp and OB, and is, to your knowledge, because anyone who's familiar with the Harp and the previous owner, Tony, and there's a story there that might be told, but I don't know, is with the new ownership, which I believe is some members from Slightly Stupid, right, own it now.
One of them is part of the owning group. I don't know if he's actually involved hands-on at all.
Do you know, because I didn't get a chance to look through it this week, do they still cater to the soccer community at all like they used to? Because they used to.
I'm fairly confident they must in some capacity, because I'll have to check with a couple folks, but I'm fairly certain that the San Diego Toffees still go there.
Okay.
And that they are connected to the new ownership group somehow. Again, I'll need to confirm that. But I do know that other groups, namely San Diego Spurs, have moved away or kind of relinquished that as a home base when the ownership changed hands. So I don't know if they're still linked to the San Diego Toffees, if that is correct, because of a personal connection, or if it's this desire to be in the soccer community. I haven't been there in a long time, truthfully, so I don't know it as well. But Bluefoot, is near and dear to my heart. It's in my local neighborhood here in Rodney. It's a good buddy of mine.
Bluefoot, I had for years been wanting to do what I had called a Bluefoot residency, where just kind of go to Bluefoot regularly for a year, for a European season year, and do profile, the Footy from the Foot podcast, profile the different groups, which keeps growing. I mean, they get more and more groups, but all the things that the people who are there, who work there, the owners who have been great to the soccer community, but do a whole series of podcasts on that. That's one thing that's always been in the back of my mind. It's really just, now bringing Soccer Shorts back, I can actually try to look for a time to do that. So that was one group of suggestions.
That's a great idea, actually. I think I take a special interest in that. I know Adam, the owner of Bluefoot and Fair Play, and Fernside, actually.
Right.
Though that's not a soccer bar. You're right. He really does care about the soccer community. So I think he'd be a good guy to maybe focus in on. Anyway, sorry, you caught me thinking here.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's what we want. We want to get and really want our listeners and our viewers to help give input as to which things we might bump to the top. I mean, ideally, we want to do all these things, but part of, with the resources is what do we do sooner rather than later, and some of it is always just timing for events or try to time things around certain events. But those were some things that you had mentioned, the toffees. So there were Everton, group was mentioned. Spurs group was mentioned. Andrew Smith, who just was profiled in some BBC newspaper about his trip out there, seeing a bunch of games, from the Spurs group here. So, right, there's a bunch of different supporter groups right now, at least for those, I guess, on the Premier League side. But we also had some calls for Sirens, to a profile on the Sirens, which is something I've been, again, meaning to do as well once we got Soccer Shorts back up and running, which I think that one actually is going to be bumped a little more to the front.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that's overdue at this point. And I know that, not to say that, like, oh, we should have done it when we weren't doing this, but, like, I think, they've been around. That's that should be near the top of the list.
Right. There was some stuff about either the union, for SDFC, of the different supporter groups, or profiling each of the different supporter groups for SDFC. And frankly, my original goal was a year ago to be doing Soccer Shorts again in 2024. And that's exactly what I was going to do. I was going to follow, kind of like I did Bridge Barkada and the locals from other series we've done, is follow all the different supporter groups and the union and tell their story all the way up to the first home match. Got sidetracked by becoming the president of the union for a little bit, and that took me away from, the actual filming. And plus, it didn't feel right to do the filming as being a principal person involved.
Small conflict of interest.
Yeah, so I will have a chance now, and this is part of going to the tailgate as well and talking to some people. But those certainly on the radar as well, because I was in the middle of doing an episode for Chavos when we went on hiatus. What is now Dago Boys is a group when they were back in 1904 that I was originally starting a profile on. So there's lots of groups there that we've already started, and there's some history that would like to wrap up the story. And the last one that was mentioned was, and I'd mentioned it last week on the podcast, was the Baller Crew. So we'll see about getting them, or maybe getting that going, and talking to some people over the next few weeks, and getting feedback from our listeners and figuring out which of these should we bump to the front. I don't think there's anybody, well, I don't know. There might be, if you're a Premier League fan, like, nah, don't do Spurs, don't do, the Blues or the Reds or the Toffees or anything else.
I'm biased, but I do think that there is an interesting story to be told with the San Diego Spurs because of the way they kind of like bifurcated and reassembled. I think San Diego Liverpool has an interesting story, the way they've kind of hopped around bars. So that is to say, like, team biases aside, I do think there's some very interesting stories there.
Well, I'm hoping to get Stephen McGlynn on from the Liverpool group, and maybe some other people on a future podcast here very soon, because we actually did profile the group. It was, we did our local EPL supporters group, like the big group, the collective of all the different supporter groups, and they do a lot of fundraising for charity and charity work, and they do a big foot golf, or at least they did pre-pandemic. That was one of the last episodes we actually wrapped up right before the pandemic hit for Soccer Shorts. And we'll probably bring Paul Brown and some other people on when we highlight that. But I'd like to get Stephen McGlynn and some other people from the Liverpool group, because we did that one. I think that was our third episode of Soccer Shorts. And I happened to be at the Princess Pub for, I'm sorry to bring this up, Dylan, but for the
that's okay.
2019.
We were just happy to be
Champions League final.
involved. Just happy to be included.
So I will, again, I've reached out and I'm waiting to hear back. So we'll see if we can get them on the show, kind of talk about theirs. And, frankly, right now, Liverpool seems to be a
Yeah, I think I'm hoping
top
they'll win
contender
the
to maybe
league.
make it back
Yeah.
there again.
I vastly prefer they win the league this year to the alternative. So, yeah.
Oh, you know what? I forgot one. There was one more. One person had put in something, and they asked a question. It wasn't really a thing. Is whatever happened to the Unnamed Soccer podcast? And that
Oh,
also
Darren
was
and
one. Darren and
Jordan,
Jordan,
right?
right?
Well, they got absorbed. It became sort of became the Always Loyal Pod or something like that, right?
Right. And I had actually done some interviews with them about it back in 21, maybe. And then when I was trying to get Soccer Shorts back then, before other life stuff got in the way. So maybe we'll have to reach out to Jordan Caruth and Darren Smith and
Yeah,
Tim Stoops and
been
some
too
of
long
these other
since I've
people.
heard.
Nate Aberea, who's even on there for a
Yeah,
little while. Get some people back in the loop, and I don't know, maybe Darren or Jordan or both might have some free time to get that going again. Maybe we
yeah,
should
that
find
would be
out
good.
whatever happened, because it was one of the things when I had interviewed way back when, there was a feeling, and I know life happens and things change, but there was a feeling like, yeah, we could totally do this. We could do this forever. We can
Mhm.
do it remotely and still get together to do a podcast. So I'm gonna have to follow up with that one and find out what's where everything's set, and if it's never coming back, at least maybe do it as one of our profile pieces on the history of our San Diego soccer culture, because I think for a lot of people that was a huge in when podcasts were really becoming more popular, that was a huge voice. It was nice you had someone who was a sports radio host on our local sports radio station who talked soccer on his shows in an era when most sports talk radio like ignored soccer. So it was great to have it, and it was great that they were local. And yeah, it was. I think for a lot of us, that was something you could look forward to every week. So it would be nice
Definitely,
to probably do a profile on that one as well.
definitely, yeah.
All right. Well, that was it. Do you have any recommendations? Now that our list is growing and growing, we're gonna have to put up a poll and see what people want
Well, again, I'm
to
pretty
target
biased, but
first.
I actually, I know a lot of the guys who run the San Diego Spurs. I actually know Andrew, who's profiled that you mentioned.
Yeah.
He and I enjoy a nice chat about, or spirited chat about what everything wrong with Tottenham Hotspur every now and then. But I'm
All
sure
right.
if we could adjust to his schedule, because I think he's very much like a morning kind of person. But we might be able to um, get him on and do an interview sometime. So
All right. That sounds good. So we'll
yeah,
keep that on there. So you ready for this week's question?
sure.
All right. Well, as we said at the beginning of the broadcast, the Open Cup is coming up, and we want to get some people's feedback as we get ready to do an episode on the Open Cup here. Talk a little bit about its history. We're not really sure where we're going exactly yet, but could be the history, could be San Diego history. But we'll dive into the Open Cup a little bit coming up in a future episode. So here's the question we'd like to know: what is your, whoever you are, what is your greatest Open Cup moment? It doesn't necessarily have to be tied directly to San Diego, although most people are listening to this are probably from our area of San Diego. So really, in terms of memories and Open Cup, what is your greatest Open Cup moment or memory? So that's our question of the week. Again, you can, if you're listening to this podcast later, whether it's through iTunes or Spotify or any of the different services, in the show notes description, there should be a link where you can text us. You can just text us your answer to that, to the question. If you are watching or looking to us on YouTube, it's going to take a little while for the links to work because YouTube has changed some things, and I could get verified early if I scan my driver's license and give it to him, which I'm not going to do. So we're going to have to wait till we get a few more shows under our belt and it happens automatically. So if you're listening to it through a podcast service, you should see the link in the description. You can quickly send us a text for any comments you want about the show. For the question of the week we have, what is your greatest Open Cup moment? Or comments or feedback or anything that you'd like to share with us. And or other things we should cover in terms of soccer shorts, or people we should have as guests on the podcast. So you'll find that in there, and we're working on some solutions to get better social media access and things set up as we move forward over these next couple of weeks. So Dylan, I don't necessarily want to put you on the spot, but I'll ask you, did anything jump to your mind in terms of your greatest Open Cup moment?
Yeah, I could give you a few different things. The away day at, I don't even know what it's called now, the StubHub Center or whatever, away against LA Galaxy was a lot of fun, even though that result didn't go our way, but that was just a great time. The first round again on the sports deck against Albion in 23, that was just a fun venue because we were just piled in behind the goal. It was kind of silly. It was a good time.
As Duran Ferree getting a start in that.
Yes, he did. And then my other one is simultaneously a regret. One of my biggest regrets was not. I seriously thought about going up to that Seattle Open Cup game. I nearly pulled the trigger on it, and I didn't, which I will always live with. But Kyle Adams' goal that night was something that will always stand out as well.
Yeah, I would say in recent memory, in terms of my personal enjoyment of the Open Cup, yes, that Kyle Adams goal there towards the end of regulation was certainly a huge moment. Such a rocket of a shot. I love that. So that was great. Again, even though the result didn't go eventually our way. But frankly, anytime a lower league team makes a deep run, whether it's an amateur team, a League One team, just anything. I love to watch those. I love the early rounds, and those are coming up real soon. This is why we want to do the Open Cup episode coming up. So again, send us what is your greatest Open Cup moments. We'll share some of those on that podcast, which I think that will be the focus of our next one, unless something, we get someone to come on that's their window that they need to be on the show. So probably be next week for that. Dylan, any last comments before we wrap up here?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so we'll get some banners up here. If you would like to watch any of the old Bridge Barkada episodes or any of the old Soccer Shorts episodes, you can go to the Soccer Shorts YouTube channel, which is at BPD, short for Big Pine Digital, at BPD Soccer Shorts. So if you go into YouTube, just search for that. Make sure you use the @ symbol. That will get you directly to the page. So at BPD Soccer Shorts. You'll find all the shows that we had done in the past, and there's a whole playlist for all the different Bridge Barkada ones if you're interested in Bridge Barkada, and we will have links to those things in the show notes as well. You can follow this podcast also on YouTube at Local Grassroots Stories. We are on BlueSky, as we said last week. We're not doing Meta or Musk, although BlueSky has their new flashes, so I'm gonna have to investigate that. That's supposed to be the Instagram alternative. So we'll look at that as well. But our BlueSky address has changed slightly because I finally got the domain piece set up, which means probably by next week we'll actually have a BlueSky account for this podcast as opposed to just the Soccer Shorts. So you can find us at soccershorts.bigpinedigital.com on BlueSky, and we'll get the show one, I'm sure, by next week. And then, of course, we do a lot with San Diego Punto Football. So again, check them out. 2 Balls and a Mic, Mondays at 8 o'clock. Soccer's Overtime on Tuesdays, usually at 6 o'clock. Actually runs same time that we do our live podcast. And the Movie Club podcast with Drew Steck and Cesar Hernandez. All right, Dylan, where can people find you?
Right there in my sub handle, dwill94 in BlueSky. And maybe
All right, thank you.
flashes, who knows?
Yeah, maybe. And for me, I this surprises most people. I actually I had a Twitter account as a teacher when Twitter first came out. So I don't know, was that 2005, 7, something super early. But nobody would use it, and I just let it go. But that was probably the last time I had a personal account. Every one of my social media accounts has been tied through my my things like Big Pine Digital or Soccer Shorts. So I think for the first time ever, as having just an account by next week, I will have my own John at bigpinedigital.com BlueSky account. So there will be a chance to follow me personally in addition to the show. But that's it. That's how you can reach us. Dylan, thank you very much for coming on, spending your evening with me and talking to Paul, finding out about Bridge Barkada. And we'll do it again next week.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Talk to you then.
All right. Bye.